Hi, everyone. My name is Harish Subramaniam, and I hope you can all see the screen. And as you can see there, I'm a director focusing on growth and new product development here at Great Learning. Um, this afternoon, I want to share some of my thoughts on a very pertinent issue, something you've all probably read and heard about. Ad infinitum, all of the you know the the jobs and in the IT industry, some of the companies are either cutting their staff or planning on reducing their hiring. While the numbers themselves may not be very high, this is obviously uh, you know thrown a curveball to a lot of people, and a lot of people are concerned about what's in it for them and what does all this mean to them. So I just wanted to share some of my thoughts, and these are not necessarily my unique thoughts, and obviously this is collated information from a number of conversations we've had with industry leaders, with some of the senior management in the companies that are involved, as well as students and alumni from our programs who are out in the workforce and who are giving us real-time information from on the ground. So this afternoon session on making it through this IT slump and making it through this slump on your own terms, so that you're not just trying to survive the conditions. You're actually thriving, and you're setting yourself up for success and actually making the most of what's going on in the industry. So before we start, why am I uniquely placed to talk to you about this particular topic? Well, there are a couple of reasons. One, obviously, as I mentioned, is because we're close to the companies involved. We're close to some of the students and alumni who give us feedback on what's going on the ground, and both from an employee perspective, but also from a management and decision maker perspective. And on a more personal note, it's because I've made a couple of career transitions myself. Over the last over a decade or decade and a half, I've worked in a couple of different industries. Each time I've had to not necessarily reinvent myself, but change focus. Learn about a whole new area, pick up a whole new set of skills, and learn to adapt and thrive. So in addition to giving you what is the common perspective, I'll also on occasion share with you some of my own perspectives from my personal experience. This is the doom and gloom scenario that you read about every day, right? Part of it is, some of it is overblown because honestly it makes good news. Infosys released a few thousand jobs in 2016. Now the released is should probably be in quotes because we don't know what that actually means. But more tangibly, Wipro, Cognizant, Tata Consultancy Services, some of the big names that have been involved, but it's not just them, it's across the board, right? Not just layoffs, but some of them are looking to cut back on fresh hiring and on realignment of their business principles and so on. You've seen it all, and I don't have to go through all of these different examples. I've just put a couple of them up there. You get the picture. And you're probably involved in some of this, and hence you're here, kind of to try and understand what you do. Why is this happening? That's an important question. Right? Every single article, every single news piece, and every single thought piece that you read about this will probably tackle it from a particular angle. Right? I don't think there is one singular reason, to be honest. I think it's been a long time coming. I honestly don't know what the future is going to be. It might pan out with that it's got minimal impact. All the companies adapt very quickly, and it doesn't really materially change anything, except for a few unfortunate people. And on the other hand, it could actually completely transform the industry. Right? We don't know the extent and how far it will go and how far-reaching the consequences are. What we do know are some of the factors that lead to this. Right? Let's zoom all the way out. One of the biggest reasons, macroeconomics. Right? So, immigration issues in countries like the U.S., Europe having tighter rules on foreign staff, protectionism among all of these countries, businesses being very cautious in light of all of this. And these reasons are hard to ignore, right? I mean, every one of the companies we're talking about, a significant portion of our IT industry, whether we like it or not, IT, BPO, and all of these industries, most of our business comes from abroad, right? And what do we do when that happens? We wait and see, right? What happens when we have a personal kind of crisis or uncertainty in our lives? We hold back our spending. We don't spend on anything new. We don't make big investments. We kind of hold back and just wait and see, right? And a lot of companies are doing just that in light of all of these macroeconomic conditions, to wait and see how all of this pans out. Right? A second big reason is the changing business model, right? Apart from temporary macroeconomic conditions, there is a more fundamental shift from process-oriented IT to more advanced technologies. Right? What are clients and customers asking our companies for? It used to be a lot of process-oriented stuff. It will continue to be that for a couple of years, but slowly you can start to see the mix shifting towards more advanced technologies, right? So towards more products, towards more solutions. Something that the Infosys CEO Vishal Sikka has constantly said is productization, right? So it's building, not depending on the kind of business where a company wants X hundred people to come and sit and do a particular process that they think is actually cheaper done through these companies, but actually giving them a problem to solve and hoping that either a product or a solution will solve it. And that is a fundamental thing that's changing. That's happening right now. If you combine these things with the fact that historically we've had deep benches in all of these companies, right? So there is slack in the system. What's the first thing that's going to get cut? It is this slack in the system, right? So every one of these companies have always had some amount of bench strength. What that means is that you can't have 100% utilization of everybody all the time. You try to keep some people in reserve in case or in anticipation of new business coming in. Sometimes it's not like just turning on or turning off a switch. You need trained people on your payrolls, even if business is going through a slight slump or a slight slow period. So you have slack in the system, right? That's by design. But in light of sustained uncertainty, like what we're seeing now, that is one of the first places to look to cut the slack in the system and to cut down on the staff and so on. And fourth, this is probably what you're reading about. I would venture to say 80% or more of all of the articles out there are probably talking about automation as the big reason, right? A lot of repeatable processes, things that people thought were once defined and then just go ahead and keep running it over and over again. Those are the first things to get outsourced. Those are the first things to move away from from companies' core operations into shared services organizations, technology service companies, and so on. And these are inevitably the first processes that will get automated, right? And are starting to get automated. To some extent, some more intelligent tasks are getting automated as well. So I don't think it's any one reason, and I don't think, and this is why it's hard to see a way around the fact that these companies are going to fundamentally change their business. It's because it's not one thing, it's all of these factors, and it's all of these factors coming together and have been coming together for quite a while. That's finally being triggered by the fact that the macroeconomic conditions are dictating some of the more immediate business decline. Now, we've kind of dissected all of that, right? But the real question is, what does this mean for me? Is there a way out of all of this? Right? What do you as an individual do in light of all of this? The obvious answer is getting skilled. NASSCOM, in a recent report, they said that they believe that 40% of the tech and BPO workforce need to reskill themselves over the next 5 years. Right? For a sector where we believe there are about 4 million people, that's 1.6 million people, right? Or that's a lot of people that need to get 16 lakh people that need to get reskilled. Reskilled, obviously, in terms of definition, could be quite broad. In some cases, it means materially change what you do. If you don't see a future for the kinds of skills and technologies and competencies that you've built. In other cases, it might just mean repositioning and augmenting your skills with some other, some of the other areas, right? I'm not necessarily. There is no silver bullet to kind of solving this, but we'll discuss now a couple of indicative things you could be doing. Right? A couple of things that have worked, that have historically worked, that will almost certainly help kind of bolster your career and make yourself secure in light of all of these uncertainties in the market. Okay. Number one, and this is a little bit counterintuitive, but in light of automation taking away people's jobs, you can actually be part of the solution and not the problem. Right? You can embrace automation. If it's an inevitability, what do? You go and figure out how it works and try to be at the forefront of that that industry development. I mean, let's take the example of something that happened in the early 1900s. Right, there was electricity that kind of became pervasive. There was no electricity before that, or industrial electricity, and between 1900 and 1950, industrial electricity was everywhere. Right? People went from horse-drawn buggies to cars and eventually planes and things like that. What happened? Productivity went up. Right? Industrially oriented productivity went up. Things went from being handcrafted in small batches by a couple of very skilled individuals, which meant that they could only produce 5-10 pieces of whatever it is that they were producing, to being able to churn out hundreds over time, right? And what ended up happening? It's not like everybody starved and everybody kind of just didn't adapt. Right? The whole world adapted. People became part of the solution. They figured out how to be part of the industrial revolution, kind of the industrial transition. Right? You went from being just a shoemaker or a flour mill grinder to understanding how the machinery works, and then operating the machinery, managing multiple pieces of machinery, actually raising the productivity, employing other people to do it, right? And that's part of the automation wave. And this is a different kind of wave that we're seeing. We're looking at a lot more process automation and things like that, and learning how to be on the forefront of that is actually a big positive. And so areas to seek out here: robotic process automation, testing automation. These are things that a lot of you might already be working on, but these are areas that you can almost certainly be on the forefront of. A second thing that will hold you in good stead is learning to connect the dots. Right, so increasingly single skills are becoming redundant, right? Or at least they're making people insecure. Knowing how to do one thing and how to do that one thing really, really well, what obviously that means that you are at the forefront of what you do in that one particular thing. But what happens if if people figure out a way to mechanize that or automate that, or basically do it cheaper and faster, right? Certainly your one single skill starts to become more of a detriment than an attribute, right? So, nearly every report that talks about 21st century skills will tell you that collaborative problem solving is one of the first things that that people should be taught in school, whether it's in high school or in college, right? And that is an important skill to develop. What does that mean? If you are tangibly, if you're working on a particular problem, understanding what is the root of the problem you're solving? What is the business case? Why are you solving this? Are there better ways of doing this? How would other people solve this? Combining a little bit of your own kind of rigor with judgment on your part, right? Looking for alternatives, looking for other ways of doing things. That all of that helps, right? So collaborating with people becomes is one of the skills, or the I guess the last standing skills that seems kind of on the path towards automation. That seems like the hardest thing to address or to challenge. So that's one thing that that you should definitely develop. The third area I want to talk about, and this is extremely important, I cannot emphasize this enough, the importance of showing and not telling. And increasingly, this is starting to become the differentiator between somebody who's successful in the workforce, especially during times of transition, and somebody who's not. Build a body of work, build a portfolio. When times are good and everybody's employed, you basically can go out and say, I know this particular skill, and people will used to hire you because you said you knew it and it was on your resume and you had a certificate, and they hired you on the basis of that. That's starting to become not relevant and not the way people hire anymore, especially in the more technical areas, and especially in areas where you can actually display or demonstrate what you're good at. I mean, think about it. When you're going and hiring a wedding photographer, you're not going to hire somebody who claims to have worked on a lot of things. You look for a portfolio. Like when you go hire an artist, they do the same thing. When you go hire a painter, you do the same thing. So why not for people who write code? Why not for people who develop projects? Why not for people who make business arguments? Right? So build a portfolio, and a portfolio is not necessarily, well, the obvious places to go and look for great portfolios are GitHub and other code repositories like that, which are public, and you can actually share that with people. And but that's no longer a differentiator. I think that's become the ground standard, right? That's table stakes. There are multiple other ways to do this, right? You can go build your own, you can kind of build a file or have a public place to demonstrate the kind of problems you've worked on. If you visualize something really, really cool, obviously I don't mean to say that take sensitive information that you worked on it and kind of display it, but if there is a way to desensitize it, or there are projects outside of work that you've worked on that are more easily shareable, share it. And show that you can do this work. You need to prove that you are an expert. Nobody's going to take your word for it anymore, right? So, and the final thing on that is, if you are working in the kind of industry which a lot of you might be, where you cannot share work, where things are sensitive, work on projects you can talk about, right? Work on projects outside of work that you can talk about. Use the skills that you've built at work to do projects outside of work that you can talk about. And a little later, we'll talk about community-driven projects and things like that you can contribute to. But build a portfolio, build a body of work that you can actually go and show to people. And in addition to this, develop a story, right? Let it be clear what your story is. Think of your bio as kind of the abstract of a story that you're writing, right? When you go to a publisher and you're trying to pitch them a book, or you go to a magazine and you tell them, I'm going to write this article, the first thing you need to tell them is, hey, here's the headline, right? This, and I don't mean a one-line headline, but here are the main points. This is the narrative. This is what's going to happen. And that's what you need to be able to tell. And in the startup circles, people would call this the elevator pitch, but have an elevator pitch for yourself, right? Think about what your story is. You are not a replaceable, kind of fungible software programmer or a technology professional who knows whatever skill right? It's a lot more than that. You are a person who has a set of skills and competencies. You're good at certain things, you're strong at certain things. Emphasize those strengths. It is really important, because a lot of people make the mistake of just checking the boxes and making sure that you show that you know 25 different things. The reality is, nobody in the world is an expert on 25 different things, right? You're really, really good in a couple of things. You are really, really strong in a couple of dimensions, and then you could be competent in a lot of others. But you have some strengths, and make sure that you show those. So it's not enough to say, I know these 25 things. It's more important. I would be more impressed if I was a recruiter to come and say, hey, this person is completely off the charts in this, right? This person is fantastic at digital marketing. This person knows process automation better than anybody else. This person is a machine learning genius, right? This person can look at any piece of data and make sense of really complicated data. Oh, by the way, he or she can also write code in Python and all of these other things. And by the way, they also know visualization. And by the way, they also have a project management certificate and all of that stuff. So all of those are competencies that help, but they're not what get you hired. You get hired because of the one or two dominant features, and that's what you need to emphasize. Right? And then final point on that is, if you advanced in your career, what skills led you to their advancement? I think through that. You don't necessarily advance because you are kind of baseline competent in a lot of things. You typically advance because you're really good at something. So think about what that really good at something is. Ask your colleagues, ask your friends, ask trusted advisors, what is it about you that really impresses them, and then emphasize those points. And obviously, I said get skilled up front. This is something that should come as no surprise. Learn new things. Right? Develop the kind of skills that will be relevant 5 years from now. Obviously, they need to be somewhat relevant now. Otherwise, it seems entirely futuristic. But think ahead. Right? Don't think about things that only have a short lifetime. Think about things that will 5 years from now will be just as relevant and pertinent, if not more. Right? And then the reason I say 5 years is because it's hard for us to think a lot beyond that. But obviously, most of the areas that I've listed out here, whether it's artificial intelligence, machine learning, and data analysis, whether it's automation, and the RPA is robotic process automation, testing, robocalling, robo-advisory, all of these things are not going away for the next 5 years, right? So in fact, they're only going to become an increasing part of our lives and professional lives. So it's important to develop these kind of skills. Information and cybersecurity is going to be relevant pretty much across the board. I mean, if you think about everything becoming automated and online and all devices being connected and things like that, I mean, guess what? The world is hackable. Your life is hackable. So, security becomes increasingly important. Everybody talks about Internet of Things. What is Internet of Things? It's the fact that your fridge can talk to your phone, which can talk to your, your lights at home, which can talk to your security guard, and basically you are completely out of the picture and everything gets automated, right? And that connected everything, self-driving cars, all of these mean that routine judgment process is taken away from you and automated. And this is again an inevitability. Obviously, we're at the forefront of this, seeing things like Amazon Echo and the recently launched, I forgot what it's called, but Apple launched a product that's competing with Amazon Echo and things like that, and connected speakers and things like that. And all of these are relevant, right? What's true of all of these technologies? As every one of these things become pervasive, the user interface, how we interact with things, the user experience, the HCI stands for human computer interaction, right? So that's a term that was historically developed to understand how we as humans interact with devices such as computers. But how do we interact with them, right? So as more and more machines start to read our understand our talk and speech instead of being able to type out commands, already the first wave of it went from us requiring to write computer level code, essentially low level code, to being able to write kind of high level interpretive code, right? Then it went to us being able to write natural language, and that getting interpreted with natural language processing. Now chatbots and all of these other things are coming through. The next, obviously, with Google Assistant and things like that, they can now understand our voice. And so the user interface, the human computer interaction element, how we interact with these machines, all of that is changing. Right? So that's going to change across the board. And then there are, obviously, I've only put the example of fintech, but this is probably true of healthcare. This is probably true of a lot of other areas, including education. And what are the advances from that perspective, right? How will we materially change the way we do things? Blockchain, obviously, for record keeping, cryptocurrencies, all of these other areas are increasingly becoming important. So you don't have to learn all of these areas. You don't have to become an expert in all of these areas, but you do need to pick the area that both fascinates you and that you feel you have a natural advantage in, given where you are. Right? Obviously, you as a professional have a particular area that you're good at, and so you need to look at what's adjacent. What's the closest area that you can, among this list or even outside of this list, that you can think of that is that is a natural extension of what you already know, right? So if you are already in kind of data handling, information security of some kind, learning the cybersecurity protocols, learning penetration testing, learning all of these areas becomes important, right? If you are already a visual person and a graphical and design oriented person, think about UI and UX and computer interaction, things like that. If you are already a hardware person, think about IoT and connected devices and things like that. So think about what is it that you can develop and what you have a natural affinity for, and what you can develop as something that seems like a seamless extension to what you already do. Let's take a step back, right? Obviously, you have to learn some of these skills, but what's even more important than learning a particular skill is learning to learn. And I don't think we do enough of this, right? And historically, we've always had this mode of, we learn for about 21, 23, 25 years, depending on how many degrees we want to notch up. And then, you go and apply all of what you've learned for the next 30, 40 years, and then you retire. Right? That's been the narrative. That's no longer the case. The refresh rate of skills and techniques and technologies has become as short as 5 to 10 years, and so you need to learn new things all the time. Everything that you're learning now will probably be automated, right? And once that happens, what happens? There are going to be higher level meta skills that start to that start to get simpler and simpler and more prone to machines doing it, right? And so you constantly have to learn new things, because we as humans are doing higher and higher order things every year, right? What used to be, computing in the 1950s and 60s was a matter of somebody sitting and actually computing things by hands, and then it went to somebody learning how to operate punch cards and tape drives and all of these other things, right? And increasingly, all of that stuff has started to become automated. At one point, you could get a PhD, and not so long ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, you could get a PhD in being able to write a neural network, and now it's one function call in pretty much any language. It's it's an open source technology that you can pick up and do today, right? And so so these things, as we as humans advance, more of these things are going to become kind of basic, essential, automatable techniques and skills, and you have to keep learning higher and higher order things, right? And so the ability to pick up a new skill quickly, but more importantly, the ability to do it methodically, right? Having a framework for yourself on how do you learn these things. Where do I look first? What do I do next? How do I build expertise in this area? What kind of projects do I tackle? How do I show people that I know some of these things? How do I become part of a community? All of that is important, right? These are all essential steps to learning to learn. So I do think it's exceedingly important to to develop the skill for continuous and lifelong learning. And then you need, learning is not, especially lifelong learning, as a working professional, you're out in the workforce. It's not like school or college or any of these, these other more structured environments. It's important to become part of a community. Right? Become a part and contribute to a community. That's how you build and develop a reputation. If you think about Linux, it came out as an open source community of people who were tired, based honestly, of of the more enterprise closed platforms, and wanted to create something that was open source, and that became a community, right? Think of pretty much any open source project, and that's basically how it develops. In the current day and age, with the open data initiative, the open source drive, with open educational resources, there are tons and tons and tons of these communities, that community-driven projects, especially with communication becoming so seamless and effective and cheap and pervasive, that you can be a part of. It's no longer a local community, that you have to pick. It's not just your city or your neighborhood or your company that you can be part of, right? You can be part of a global community that does pretty much anything from writes poetry to solves math problems. And there's a professor of mathematics who basically open sourced the solving of really challenging problems. The so-called millennium problems, and that's an open source project where mathematicians, people with Fields medals, and the people at the pinnacle of their career, and amateurs all contribute to this, right? So become part of such a community. One, it develops a reputation. Two, all the work that you do is not sitting kind of in your head or on your computer. It's getting examined and critically reviewed by people who are potentially better than you at the beginning. And over time, you start to, you start going from being the beginner in the community to being the person who mentors other people. So you develop so many skills and build a reputation in the process. So it's really, really important to contribute to that kind of a cause. Right, and for those of you who feel daunted by the idea of going and joining an open source community, because most of the people are so advanced and seem like they're so much better than you, there are forums like go to firsttimersonly.com. It's a fantastic platform, where they make a list of beginner only open source communities and projects that you can be part of. Right, so. Yeah, and I've kind of explained how to set yourself up for kind of not just to get through this slump, and not just to get through this kind of crisis or moment of confusion and uncertainty in the industry, but basically these things are going to be hold you in good stead regardless of what what the market conditions are. And more importantly, these are the kind of essential skills and ways to approach work that are going to stand you in good stead for the, in the future for generations to come. So I think this may not be comprehensive, but if you, I guarantee that if you kind of went through these steps and actually understood how how you can kind of make yourself impervious to all of these market conditions and changes, make yourself stand out if you're somehow unique. It doesn't matter what companies think, right? Companies only cut workforce and let people go and things like that if you are no different from the thousands of other people like you. If you are somehow unique, no matter what the market conditions, they're going to want to keep you, right? Because you're valuable to them. So it's become valuable in that sense. So those are my thoughts. I do obviously want to spend, the intention was always to spend a lot of time answering some of your questions. So so if you have any, please feel free to ask those questions. And I see a few of them, and I'm going to start answering some of them right now. Okay, so one of the questions is about this person who works in the IT infrastructure industry, focusing on VoIP implementation, project management, and so on, has an MBA. How do you think they should cope with the new paradigm? Well, first off, I think if you look, if you understand IT infrastructure, and it sounds like from your background with your MBA and with some of your kind of project management experience and so on, that you understand business imperative and how to translate a business problem into the IT infrastructure needs, then you're no longer completely fungible. You're not completely replaceable, right? You do have the business context. I think the two areas that off the top of my head that sound like they would help a lot are one, obviously, if you understand IT infrastructure in the current moment, you need to stay on top of what's coming in the future and be proactive in understanding what is the IT setup and the framework going to be over the next 5, 7, 8, 10 years, right? And put yourself in the shoes of a CIO and say, hey, if I was a CIO of this company, what am I going to do? What are the kind of infrastructure decisions I'm going to make? Now think about, okay, what are the question marks, right? Chances are the question marks that you have are the same question marks that the CIO and the CTO are actually having right now. So that becomes a great place to go and focus your energy, right? So again, if you're an IT infrastructure person, think and let's, for example, take the case of everything moving on the cloud and people setting up big data environments. What does all that mean to you? What is that going to mean in terms of administration of all of the infrastructure? What does that mean in terms of actually maintaining and handling the vast network? Is your entire infrastructure going to go away? If it's not going to go away, how is that going to change, and things like that, right? So that is real. Those are really the questions that will answer your own question. But in the short run, I think I would say think like a CIO in that perspective. Another question about somebody who was in who's been in manual testing, and the question is, should he or she pursue automated testing? I'd say go for it, right? And like I said, think about adjacencies first, right? Obviously, you can change, you can change your track and go do something completely different. But chances are, okay. So what's the difference between you, who has 5-10 years of experience in one particular area, but wants to do something completely new, and somebody who's starting from scratch? And let's say I wanted to go become a journalist tomorrow, right? And if you were hiring journalists, would you hire me, who has no experience in journalism but has 15 years of experience in other industries, or would you hire somebody coming out of college, who's worked for the college newspaper, who has about 1 year of beat experience, and potentially you can pay them 1/3 of what you would pay me, right? I mean, just answer that question for yourself. And I think the answer is pretty obvious, that you should be looking at something that uses the skills you've already developed. So in this case, the automated testing area seems like a natural fit. Okay, another question from somebody who has actually been in the unfortunate position of being laid off and learning big data and Hadoop, but it's difficult going in the beginning, as it's a kind of vast area. Short answer, there's not much you can do about it except stick with it, right? Yes, it's a vast area, and just like I answered to the previous person's question, it's not going to immediately make you incredibly valuable to somebody who's hiring. For better or worse, I think one of the unfortunate reflections of the industry, especially in India, is that gaps and career breaks and things like that are viewed with suspicion. Like I said, if you just think back to the points I made, a couple of those areas will stand you in really good stead. Join a big data and Hadoop community. Go to meetups and try to understand what are the kind of problems that people are trying to solve. And if you try to sit on the abstract, it's like saying, I want to learn physics, right? I could learn, when I was in school, I learned physics for, I guess, the best part of a decade, right? In some form or the other, starting from science all the way up to physics. And I could go to college for physics. I could do all of that, right? Are you actually going to learn every single square inch of everything there is to learn in big data and Hadoop, or are you going to learn about a couple of very pertinent problems that doesn't mean that you're the expert in everything, but that does make you really good at one or two things, right? So focus on that. So if you join these communities, you get a good sense for who those are. So go to a meetup, go to some of these community discussions, and try to understand what are the kind of challenges that people are working on. Find one that you like and focus on that. Secondly, build a body of work, build a portfolio that you're learning all of these areas. Be able to show it. These days everything's on a cloud. You can actually get a Google Cloud account for free. You can set it up. You can take vast amounts of data. You can manipulate it. You can kind of understand how to visualize this data. You can put that up on GitHub. It's all open source, and it's cost you almost nothing, right? So just think about how you can take this really big problem area and break it down into smaller pieces. And secondly, how do you then demonstrate your expertise in one or two areas, right? That's not to say that people are suddenly going to give you a job because you know this area, but it does help. It helps a lot more than just doing a bunch of courses and then going and telling people that's what I've been doing for the last year. Okay, another question. I'm working in big data projects where I'm using Spark and Hadoop. What can I focus on? I'm not entirely clear about the question, but I think your question is around the choice between Spark and Hadoop, and the short answer is, look, a lot of companies are moving from Hadoop to Spark because it's faster for a certain class of problems. There are inevitably going to be other companies that are going to stay on the Hadoop ecosystem. Honestly, the question is kind of, there is no right answer, right? It's a little bit like saying, I'm going to start running. should I buy Nike shoes, Adidas shoes, or Puma shoes, right? That is, it's a little bit like that. The reality is, focus on, learning how to run, focus on the mechanics of, being able to run longer distances, faster, without injury, focus on hydration, focus on all of these. Those are the base skills, right? Shoes come, shoes go. Similarly, tech platforms come, tech platforms go. The tools keep going in and out. So, I mean, I could tell you an answer which is, Spark seems to be faster for a larger class of problems, and therefore a lot of companies are migrating to Spark compared to Hadoop. But the short answer is, it doesn't matter. Pick one and become really, really, really good at it, because ultimately, you need to be able to solve real, tangible problems with this, and really, you need to focus on that, right? On the margin, Spark seems more approachable than Hadoop, I think, because it's got, you can write Python code on it, you can write R code on it. So what programming language you already know is no longer a barrier. If you're already very proficient in Java and or Scala, and you're able to, or if you already work on MapReduce, to write MapReduce code on Hadoop, then great, go ahead with that. But really, if pick the one that you think is most intuitive to you, and go with it. But whichever one you pick, kind of become really, really good at it. Yeah, so the person who wanted to learn, who's finding it difficult to learn in the beginning, said that he's a mainframe programmer. Okay, that qualifies things. Okay, another question: what is the scope in big data analytics, and how will be the growth? Okay, so this is a very tough question to answer in brief, but I'll try. Look, the big data analytics is, well, to be honest, is an amalgamation of different areas, right? If you think about analytics okay, so if you think about what analytics means, people have data. Okay, let me take even a step further back. People have a problem to solve. They, need to collect vast amounts of data because they think that data will help them answer the question at hand, whether it's customer churn issues, whether it's understanding fraud rates, whether it's understanding why somebody's not buying your product, whether it's understanding why a drug is not being used. If you're a pharmaceutical company, whatever the problem is, you think that you need a set of data. You go and try to find that set of data. Once you find it, you need to kind of manipulate it and do a set of analyses on it, right? Now, obviously, that analysis can lead to various answers. It can either prove or disprove your answer, or your initial hypothesis of what you were trying to test, and that's given you, either your entire answer or some part of your answer. Now, if you think about all of this, there is a data collection, data processing, data manipulation issue. There is, to go back to the other question, an infrastructure question around infrastructure, software choices, configuration, and so on. There is obviously the analytics question, which is around what kind of analysis do I do? And then there is a business interpretation question of, okay, what is the business problem I'm trying to solve, and what should I be doing for it? And there is an affiliated area, which is the visualization problem of, okay, so how exactly do I think about making this data transparent, or making my analysis transparent? Right. So each of these, whether it's data engineering, it's data analysis, there is the configuration and use of big data tools, there is manipulation of data on the big data tools in a distributed way, there is machine learning algorithms, there are statistical algorithms, there are visualization tools, and then there are visualization principles. All of that together is big data analytics. Right? At least in the context of how we think about it, and hence that's how we offer the programs. Every one of these areas is pertinent, it's relevant. Right? You will become, over the course of your career, an expert in one or more of these areas. You will not become an expert on every one of these areas. In fact, this is everything that I've told you in the long run will typically be done by an entire analytics team. Right? But what it does help is for you to know what all these different areas are, and how they interact with each other. Right? So it's like, if you think about becoming a software developer or an app developer or whatever it is, you need to understand, a little bit of the product side. You need to understand a little bit of UI and UX. You need to understand, app development. You need to understand APIs. Sometimes you need to understand hardware. You need to understand databases, and all of that together becomes, makes you a good app developer, right? Understanding the business and so on. Now, in very large teams or large implementations, every one of these areas becomes a specialty. There is a specialty UI person, there's a specialty hardware person, and so on, right? And it's similar in big data analytics. In very, very small teams, right? If you are the analysis person in a 5-member startup, you will be in charge of everything from understanding what data to bring to what kind of analysis you should be doing, and then what does it mean for business. If you work for a bank that has 18,000 people, you're probably going to have a specialty role for everybody, right? So the short answer is every one of these areas is going to grow. Big data analytics is not one area per se. It's the whole value chain, or the whole field of everything that goes into analyzing and using data to make good business decisions. It is probably the hottest field right now. So I guess the short answer is, yeah. Do you think it's going to grow? I think it's going to grow, unchecked and really rapidly for the next 5 years, if not more. So I hope that answers your question. I think the person who had a question about Hadoop versus Spark clarified and said, okay, what about in the 5-year time frame? I don't think it changes. My answer changes. I think both Hadoop and Spark will be relevant for the next 5 years. There will be evolutions. There's a new tool introduced nearly every week. So just because the Hadoop environment or the ecosystem doesn't mean anything. It means that you constantly have to keep up to date on all of the tools that that is built on the kind of HDFS layer and the HBase tables and all of that other stuff. Or if you're on Spark, you'll need to learn all of the Spark related tools. But pick one and go with it. But make sure you're really, really good at it, because learning the other is not that hard, to be honest. It's the principles of how you do how you work on either of them that matters. Unless, okay, so the qualification is unless you are the administrator, in which case obviously it's completely different. But both should be around for the next 5 years. I'd say if you are an administrator on the margin, then you should you should probably know a little bit of both, because to some extent Spark is built on a lot of what Hadoop used to be. Another question is around a Microsoft BI professional moving into big data and machine learning, especially with big data technologies being mostly non-Microsoft technologies like Java, Python, and so on. Look, like I said, think about adjacencies. If you're a business intelligence person, visualization tools are everywhere. Microsoft has its own cloud platform. Increasingly, is starting to make products out of a lot of the analytical tools. So. How do you move in? I'd say start with what you know well, right? If you're a business intelligence person, try to understand, work your way back, right? Business intelligence is kind of the last step in this process, in the sense that it's the point at which you're generating reports, it's the point at which you're displaying information to the business user. Think back to what kind of visualizations went into it and why, right? What are the choices? Think back to, okay, why is that the right way to represent that information, and what kind of analysis went into it, and learn that area. So I think it makes it a lot easier for you to be an analysis and visualization and business intelligence person that is closer to the business, rather than becoming a big data expert, right? So think about those adjacencies, right? Since you seem to be on that path already, I think it makes a lot of sense for you to focus on that. In terms of whether it's Microsoft or non-Microsoft technologies, I honestly can't direct you one way or the other, and the reason is because pretty much everything is becoming tool agnostic anyway. Most of these are becoming interchangeable plug-and-play systems. So I'm assuming, just like with Android and iOS and everything, you have to pick a platform and go with it. But I don't think Microsoft is going anywhere in the short run. So at least in the short run, you can't go wrong trying to understand, how everything works in the context of the Microsoft Azure plus analytics layer on top of that, which then leads to your kind of business intelligence and so on. Okay, a question about a completely drastic change of career here from somebody who wants to become a data engineer from a construction engineer. The question is this the right time because of the layoffs and so on? So look, the reality is it's not, except for the fact that you have had responsibility, manage teams, being a professional, and know how to execute to deadlines and so on. There are not many things I can think that translate in from construction engineering to data engineering. So you have to accept the fact that you're going to start from scratch, which means either kind of resetting your career in some ways or thinking about ways to finding some kind of a niche or intersection between data engineering and a problem in the construction industry. Right. So I think the one kind of advantage you have if you start to become good at data engineering is understanding the unique business problems of the construction industry and then being able to solve that. It's not something that I know anything about. It's not something that most people who have not worked in the industry know anything about. So obviously that seems like a good place for you to start. But the setting the expectations is very, very important here, right? So you cannot expect that you walk in and you've done a course or you've done a 1-year program or a 6-month program or whatever it is in a particular area, and therefore somebody is going to give you a mid-career or a mid-level job in that area, right? So that's not going to happen. When it comes to your question about is this the right time, I don't see why not. Yes, there are some layoffs and some kind of job uncertainty in the IT industry, but even within that, there are obviously going to be a lot of new jobs in a lot of areas. Now, like I said, if you're in a head-to-head competition, with 8 years of experience in the construction industry, who's learned, data analysis or data engineering for a while, versus somebody who's been in data warehousing for 6-7 years and then learned data engineering, chances are, the second person is going to get the job and not you, right? So you have to be realistic about what it is that you're trying to achieve, which is why if you learn these skills, the logical place to go is figure out how you can use these skills in to a domain or to a body of knowledge that only you uniquely know, and that's construction engineering in this case. Okay, so a question about somebody spent 8 years in digital marketing and now taking a break to build skills in data science and Japanese. Honestly, I can't answer the Japanese part. I think it's always a good idea to learn foreign languages. It just helps from personal development perspective and makes you a more interesting candidate in general. And in terms of somebody who knows digital marketing and is trying to build skills in data science, I think it's seamless, right? I mean, if you think about where a lot of data these days is coming from, it's online, it's social media, it's it's responses to kind of campaigns, digital campaigns, and leads that you've generated and so on. And so being analytical, being able to work on very, very vast amount of data with with that 8 years of experience in that marketing domain, it's fabulous. I think it could be a fantastic move. Okay, somebody has 18 years experience in a non-technical area. How will business analytics help me? It's hard to answer that question without knowing what exactly you did, but I think the answer is very similar to the answer I gave to the person who was asking me about the construction engineering area. Look, if you don't have, I mean, let's be honest about what the industry is like, right? So and think about your own context, right? If you were setting up, if let's say you set up a company tomorrow, and you wanted to hire somebody to kind of, let's say you're a non-technical person and you want to hire somebody to build all of your technical infrastructure, solve all your technology problems and so on. Right? Let's say you want to build an app to kind of compete with Swiggy or whatever it is, right? So is that going to, are you going to hire somebody who's done a 1-year business analytics program or a 1-year big data analytics program or a 1-year iOS development program? Chances are no. Right? Chances are they're going to go and hire somebody who's had 10 years of experience in this area. Besides, because your salary expectations are higher, they're probably going to be more cost competitive, and therefore they will go with them. Right? I mean, that is the reality of how you would hire. So I don't see why it would change for somebody else. I think where understanding business analytics helps, again, to use an analogy or to use the example of somebody who asked about digital marketing experience earlier. Look, analytics is not an area per se, right? I mean, it is a way of doing things. It's, people have always analyzed things. People have always tried to get information and analyze and try to find an answer. Right? In the olden days, you would look at ledgers and logbooks and try to understand this. Then it became calculators, then it became computers, and now you have kind of more sophisticated tools that are able to handle vast amount of information and run sophisticated algorithms without much effort. But the underlying principle has not changed. Right? I don't know what the non-technical area is, but let's say you work in healthcare, let's say you work in, I don't know, food services in the restaurant business, right? You have always worked, you understand a business really, really well, right? Whatever that business is. Now understanding what the various points of pain points of customers are, how do you actually gather data, whether it's from customer data or whether it's your own backend data, how do you then synthesize it, and then be having the ability to actually analyze and tell compelling stories to your management team about what's going on in that industry and how it affects you. That makes you very, very valuable. Right? Chances are you're going to then be a business analyst in that particular industry, or you're going to be on a functional team like marketing or sales or whatever it is. But analytics is not restricted to an analytics skill. It's like somebody saying I'm analytically minded. That just means you are good with looking at a lot of information and analyzing it and coming up with a solution. So where and how will business analytics help you? It's exactly that. It's combining your business acumen with the analysis skills. In fact, the extension to that is a vast majority of our of people who come to some of our programs actually do come from a business background and then go back to a business area, but much more analytically minded, which makes them a lot more valuable. I believe I've answered most of the questions. If I haven't, please follow up with my email ID right there, harish@greatlearning.in, with any specific questions you have, and I will try to answer it myself, or somebody on my team will. Yeah, otherwise it's been great, at least one-sided interacting with all of you. I hope this has been helpful to most of you, and if you, like I said, if you have any other questions, or if you have questions about our programs per se, just go to greatlearning.in, to our website, or reach out to somebody from there and we can answer. And otherwise, yeah, good luck with everything. Thank you.